Now we come to Sutta 62, Maharahulovada Sutta, the greater discourse of advice to Rahula. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's park. Then when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Savatthi for alms. The Venerable Rahula also dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, followed close behind the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One looked back and addressed the Venerable Rahula thus: Rahula, any kind of material form, whatever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all material form to be seen as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And Rahula asks, only material form, Blessed One? Only material form, Sublime One? And the Buddha said, material form, Rahula, and feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Then the Venerable Rahula considered thus: who would go into town for alms today when personally admonished by the Blessed One? Thus he turned back and sat down at the root of a tree, holding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness in front of him. I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see Venerable Rahula was going to follow the Buddha on Pindapata, alms round. When the Buddha gave him advice about the five aggregates, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, to consider it with proper wisdom, that it is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Then he thought, he's been given this advice how he should put it into practice. So he sat under a tree and meditated. It shows Venerable Rahula is very diligent. The Venerable Sariputta saw him sitting there and addressed him thus: Rahula, develop mindfulness of breathing. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. Then when it was evening, the Venerable Rahula rose from meditation and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit? I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see, probably in this sutta was spoken, Venerable Rahula was still quite young also. That's why when Venerable Sariputta told him to practice mindfulness of breathing, he wasn't sure how to practice it. So he asked the Buddha for advice. So you see, in the morning he went Pindapata and sat under the tree. So the whole day he was meditating. And when the sun set, then only he went to see the Buddha. And the Buddha said, Rahula, whatever internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified and clung to, that is, head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinew, bone, marrow, kidney, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lung, large intestine, small intestine, contents of the stomach, feces, and whatever else internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified and clung to. This is called the internal earth element. Now both the internal earth element and the external earth element are simply earth element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the earth element. So here the internal earth element refers to whatever is hard, because the earth signifies hardness, hardness element. So whatever is hard in the body is considered the internal earth element, and it should be seen, the Buddha says, as not mine, not I, not myself. What Rahula is the water element. The water element may be either internal or external. What is the internal water element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is water, watery and clung to, that is, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tear, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joint, urine, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is water, watery and clung to. This is called the internal water element. Now both the internal water element and the external water element are simply water element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the water element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the water element. Stop here for a moment. The water element is whatever is watery, and water has the characteristic of cohering together and giving whatever it is in shape. For example, our body has this shape because of the water element. If we were to dehydrate our body completely, then it will turn into powder and it will crumble. So water has a property of cohering and giving shape. What Rahula is a fire element. The fire element may be internal or external. What is the internal fire element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery and clung to. That is, that by which one is warmed, ages and is consumed, and that by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed and tasted gets completely digested, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery and clung to. This is called the internal fire element. Now both the internal fire element and the external fire element are simply fire element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the fire element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the fire element. Stop here for a moment. So the fire element refers to the heat element. This fire element warms us and makes us age and helps in digestion. What Rahula is the air element. The air element may be either internal or external. What is the internal air element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is air, airy and clung to. That is, upgoing winds, downgoing winds, winds in the belly, winds in the bowels, winds that course through the limbs, in-breath and out-breath, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is air, airy and clung to. This is called the internal air element. Now both the internal air element and the external air element are simply air element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the air element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the air element. Let's stop here for a moment. This air element has the characteristic of motion because of the air inside us. The winds move and the blood flows, etc. So the air element refers to what causes motion. What Rahula is the space element. The space element may be either internal or external. What is the internal space element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial and clung to. That is, the holes of the ears, the nostrils, and the door of the mouth, and the aperture whereby what is eaten, drunk, consumed and tasted gets swallowed, and where it collects, and whereby it is excreted from below, and whatever else internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial and clung to. This is called the internal space element. Now both the internal space element and the external space element are simply space element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the space element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the space element. So this space element is space or whatever is spatial. And the four great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, plus the space element counts for the body. Our body consists of these 5 elements. And then the Buddha continued, Rahula, develop meditation that is like the earth. For when you develop meditation that is like the earth, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as people throw clean things and dirty things, excrement, urine, spittle, pus and blood on the earth, and the earth is not horrified, humiliated and disgusted because of that. So too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like the earth. For when you develop meditation that is like the earth, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha is telling him to develop the meditation that is like the earth, which is not moved by whatever clean or dirty things are thrown on it. It is not horrified, humiliated or disgusted. In other words, it's telling Rahula to develop the mind so it becomes quite solid and unshakable, not moved by external sense objects, not moved by feelings, etc. Rahula, develop meditation that is like water. For when you develop meditation that is like water, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as people wash clean things and dirty things, excrement, urine, spittle, pus and blood in water, and the water is not horrified, humiliated and disgusted because of that. So too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like water. For when you develop meditation that is like water, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Similarly, the Buddha says, be unmoving like the water. Rahula, develop meditation that is like fire. For when you develop meditation that is like fire, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as people burn clean things and dirty things, excrement, urine, spittle, pus and blood in fire, and the fire is not horrified, humiliated and disgusted because of that. So too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like fire. For when you develop meditation that is like fire, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Rahula, develop meditation that is like air. For when you develop meditation that is like air, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as the air blows on clean things and dirty things, on excrement, urine, spittle, pus and blood, and the air is not horrified, humiliated and disgusted because of that. So too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like air. For when you develop meditation that is like air, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Rahula, develop meditation that is like space. For when you develop meditation that is like space, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as space is not established anywhere, so too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like space. For when you develop meditation that is like space, arisen, agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is basically telling Rahula to develop the mind to be so strong, so unshakable, which is only possible through strong concentration. Then only the mind can be unmoving. Whatever contacts invade, whatever contacts the mind comes in contact with, it is unmoving. Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. Rahula, develop meditation on compassion. For when you develop meditation on compassion, any cruelty will be abandoned. Rahula, develop meditation on joy. For when you develop meditation on joy, any discontent will be abandoned. Rahula, develop meditation on equanimity. For when you develop meditation on equanimity, any aversion will be abandoned. Rahula, develop meditation on foulness. For when you develop meditation on foulness or unattractiveness, any lust will be abandoned. Rahula, develop meditation on the perception of impermanence. For when you develop meditation on the perception of impermanence, the conceit I am will be abandoned. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, these few lines are very important. You can see here the opposites. For example, the opposite of metta, loving kindness, is ill will or anger. So when you develop loving kindness, metta, you overcome ill will. So if a person has a bad temper, prone to anger, then he should practice metta more. And then compassion, the opposite of compassion is cruelty. So we develop compassion to cut off any cruel thoughts, any tendency to cruelty in us. And then we develop joy, and when we are happy and joyful, we will be contented. Discontent will not arise. And then when we develop equanimity, aversion towards unpleasant things, unpleasant people, etc., will be abandoned. And then we develop meditation on foulness of the body, unattractiveness of the body, to cut lust, because a normal person has a lot of lust. So when we practice unattractiveness of the body, for example, the way the Buddha taught is to meditate on the 32 parts of the body. You recite the 32 parts of the body: head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinew, bone, marrow, kidney, heart, etc. So when you go through these 32 parts of the body, slowly you contemplate one by one. That is one way to see it clearly. And then when you chant the 32 parts of the body quickly, that is samatha practice to attain concentration. Both can be practiced. So the purpose of meditating on the foulness of the body is to cut off lust. And meditation on the perception of impermanence, to see impermanence in everything, to see impermanence of everything in the world, especially the body and the mind. We can see impermanence in the 5 aggregates, body and the mind, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Then it helps us to cut the conceit I am, this perception of a self. So these few sentences here are very important. Good to remember them. Opposite of loving kindness is ill will. Opposite of compassion is cruelty. Opposite of joy is discontent. Opposite of equanimity is aversion. And then when we meditate on the foulness of the body, that helps us to cut lust. When we meditate on the perception of impermanence of everything in the world, it helps us to cut the perception of a self, of a I am. Okay, then the Buddha continued. Rahula, develop meditation on mindfulness of breathing. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. And how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated? So that it is of great fruit and great benefit. Here Rahula, a monk, having gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, sets his body erect, and established mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he understands, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he understands, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he understands, I breathe out short. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body of the breath. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body of breath. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily volition. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily volition. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, when we practice mindfulness of the breath, if it's a long breath, we know that it's a long breath. If it's a short breath, we know it is a short breath. Also, we must be able to distinguish whether the breath is incoming or outgoing, breathing in or breathing out. And experiencing the whole breath, you breathe in. You notice here, the Buddha's method of meditation on the breath is to experience the breath itself, and to know, and then this last part, experience the whole body of the breath, then tranquilizing the bodily volition. What is the bodily volition? This is kaya sankhara. That means the bodily volition refers to the breath. Earlier we saw in the sutta that the bodily volition refers to the breath itself. So here is saying, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the breath. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the breath. So this meditation is about the breath itself. Unfortunately, later books like the Visuddhimagga, instead of teaching you to meditate on the breath, they teach you to meditate at a particular point. This is not mentioned by the Buddha. You don't have to restrict yourself to a particular point. The point is to notice the whole breath coming in and out. The breath coming in and out. It is the breath itself we meditate on, not the particular point. Like in the Visuddhimagga, they tell you either to put your attention on your upper lip or the tip of your nose, etc. This is not what is taught by the Buddha. And nowadays, some Burmese monks, they tell you to meditate on the abdomen, rising and falling of the abdomen. This is also not according to the sutta. The sutta is telling you to put your attention on the breath itself. But initially, of course, because of sloth and torpor, it's very difficult to get a feeling of the breath or to notice the breath. But it doesn't matter, as long as you can differentiate between the in-breath and an out-breath, that's enough. As long as you know you're breathing in or you're breathing out, even though you cannot notice it very clearly, that is enough. Then as you continue doing that, you can just follow the breath. After some time, the mind starts to clear. When the mind starts to clear, then you'll be able to notice more clearly. To continue, he trains us, I shall breathe in, experiencing delight. He trains us, I shall breathe out, experiencing delight. He trains us, I shall breathe in, experiencing pleasure. He trains us, I shall breathe out, experiencing pleasure. He trains us, I shall breathe in, experiencing the mental volition. He trains us, I shall breathe out, experiencing the mental volition. He trains us, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the mental volition. He trains us, I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the mental volition. Okay, stop here for a moment. So here, this one, you cannot force yourself to experience delight. If you practice the earlier part, keeping your attention on the breath, slowly tranquilizing the breath, and you keep on doing that, then slowly the mind becomes more concentrated, then delight, piti will arise, and sukha, pleasure. So when you come to that stage, then you experience it. You cannot force yourself to experience it. All these steps later, they come naturally. And then the mental volition refers to feeling and perception. So he experiences the feeling and perception, and then tranquilizing the feeling and perception, tranquilizing the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe in, experiencing the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out, experiencing the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe in, gladdening the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out, gladdening the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe in, concentrating the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out, concentrating the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe in, liberating the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out, liberating the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe in, contemplating impermanence. He trains us, I shall breathe out, contemplating impermanence. He trains us, I shall breathe in, contemplating fading away. He trains us, I shall breathe out, contemplating fading away. He trains us, I shall breathe in, contemplating cessation. He trains us, I shall breathe out, contemplating cessation. He It trains us as a breathe in, contemplating relinquishment. It trains us as a breathe out, contemplating relinquishment. Rahula, that is how mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, so that it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated in this way, even the final in-breaths and out-breaths are known as they cease, not unknown. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Rahula was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. It's the end of the sutta. So this mindfulness of breathing is not an easy meditation object. The way the Buddha taught his disciples is to not allow the mindfulness to lapse. Every breath must be known, so that they put their attention on the breath all the time, whether sitting or standing or walking or lying down. Always remembering to put the attention on the meditation object. That is sati. So that's how the Buddha's disciples practice until the mindfulness is 24 hours a day. That's why here the Buddha says, even the last breath, they are aware of even the last breath. So these later steps in the practice, you don't have to worry about it. As you progress, it will come naturally. You can't force yourself to practice every step of it. So this sutta, this advice to Rahula, is the Buddha says in the beginning is see the five aggregates, basically body and mind, as not mine, not I, not myself. Then after that, when Rahula asked the Buddha about meditation, and the Buddha said to practice meditation so that the mind becomes unmoving, just like the elements are unmoving. So the mind should develop to that stage. That means to have strong samadhi, concentration. Also, the Buddha said to practice metta, loving kindness, compassion, karuna, and joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, and also to meditate, contemplate the foulness of the body, and to contemplate the impermanence of everything in the world. And then the Buddha ends with the steps in the mindfulness of breathing.